It's a pleasure being live with you once again. This is One on One. My name is Teambuiler Oyinsom. And there are quite a few important conversations that just need to be had once in a while. And we have the opportunity to connect with people from all over the world who have important information to share. And there is a topic that's been on the lips of many people for the past few weeks, ever since a very devastating train collision happened in Lagos. And we've invited someone to come and have a conversation on that today. All right. But before we begin, I would like to share some information with you. Now, you are probably someone who has tried to create ads by yourself. Maybe you've gone on to Canva and you've tried to design something here or there. Maybe you've been paying this young Gen Z graphic artist who knows his stuff and makes your brand look good. But now, because of the advent of AI, you can do this all on your own. You could actually create your own ads with an AI called adcreatives.ai. And it's right there on your screen right now. There's a QR code you can scan right now. And it's very simple. All you have to do is input your information, maybe the name of your company, the name of your brand, maybe a brand color. Maybe there's a picture on the internet you would like to share. Once you put in that information and click send, it will generate up to 100 different designs for your brand and your company. All you have to do is input all this information and press send, and the AI will generate different shapes, different sizes for different platforms, for YouTube, for Facebook, for Twitter, for any platform you would like to share these designs on. The design you're seeing on the right of the screen right now was generated by AI, and your brand could generate your own as well. So just scan the QR code on your screen right now for a more efficient solution to your ad creation challenges. All right, then, now back to the show. Now, this particular conversation is one I've been looking forward to. The recent train crash earlier on in March in Lagos, Nigeria, further highlighted the severity of the stress in the rail industry, with over 500 train incidents having been recorded in the country since 2018 alone. Now, we're joined by Dr. Joshua O AWESOME. He is going to help us identify the specific sources of stress and importance of addressing this stress and fatigue in the rail industry. Welcome, Dr. Josh.
Hey, it's a great day. T-O-T-T Layo Oyinsom. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Thanks so much for joining us. I know you are extremely busy and you had to squeeze out time just for us. We really appreciate you. Thank you.
It's an honor and a delight to be here. Greetings to you, to your viewers, and your listeners from across the globe.
All right. So if you don't know Dr. Josh, let me allow his head to sweat small. He started originally as a motivational speaker and inspirational columnist. Now, he's also an international conference compere. He's a professional speaker. He was on Africa's biggest TV network, NTA, for over half a decade as an anchor on morning motivation. And also the business newspaper, right? Business Day. It's like the Financial Times of London, Business Day. It's read by over 50,000 decision makers in Sub Saharan Africa. He honestly has so much going on. Now, today, Dr. Josh holds a PhD in stress management and he leads as a learning and development consultant, accredited facilitator, and so much more. It's great to have you once again.
It's an honor and a delight.
Let's jump straight into it. Now, how did you react when you heard about the train crash in Lagos? I'm going to call it a collision as opposed to just a crash. When I think of crash, I think of, planes. When I think of collisions, I think of trains. But when you heard about it, what was your first response?
I think I'd like to start by highlighting that prior to that train crash, I had conducted a stress assessment on the rail industry. And the reason why I did it was because a couple of years ago, I had heard of an incident that happened in Nigeria that really shook the country with even a medical doctor had been impacted by that incident. And it got me thinking about a thought that was playing on the canvas of my mind. So, as somebody who does what I do, I think about what I'm thinking about while I'm thinking about the thoughts that I'm thinking. And so that was what gave rise to that research around stress in the rail industry, specifically Nigeria. Now, so I traveled into Nigeria during the pandemic. And I actually was on the train ride from Lagos in Yaba to Ibadan. And I really, truly wanted to experience what it felt like. It was a great experience, but clearly some of the things that I had done research around began to tug at my heart, which those who are just running the system possibly did not notice. And what I wanted to do was to deepen my work. So I was not caught unawares. I literally can say, with every sense of humility, that the data, the research already showed that an accident like that was going to reoccur. Because the one that initially happened, we do not see anywhere in the media any information that shows that they had carried out an assessment on not just that incident, but the entire rail infrastructure of Nigeria. And so I was not surprised, but I was concerned that many more deaths were happening. So in a nutshell, I was not surprised. I was saddened, but I wasn't surprised. And I dare to say that that was what informed my writing about the research work that I do and I have done and continue to do from a stress reduction perspective, which I titled Clearing the Tracks, the importance of addressing stress in the rail industry.
So at this point, I just wanted to say that when I saw the word stress, in there, I wasn't sure how to connect with it. There are different stressors in different industries, but maybe you need to understand why you use the word stress from your perspective.
Right. So first off, I'll tell you where my focus on stress began. I was hired by a global brand, a Swiss brand to be specific. And this is your podcast. I don't have the permission to advertise or talk about them.
It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. You can go ahead. You can go ahead.
Right. So specifically, I was hired by Ericsson. And Ericsson, many people see them as, okay, a telephone company. But what many people do not know is that they have over 30,000 inventions. Bluetooth is one of their inventions. And so I had been hired by Ericsson to support 25 young people who are the best of the best across the continent, to coach and mentor them and help them have what I call a soft landing experience into the corporate world. Yes, they had graduated, they were best in their class, best in their schools. And Ericsson did this on a regular basis. Every 1 to 2 years, they would look for the best of the best across Africa and bring them into South Africa to be supported from a learning and development perspective. And this project was supervised by the head of learning and development for Ericsson. Now, they needed an expert, somebody who is also an African, has learning and development experience, has coaching and mentoring experience to support from an external perspective to groom and shape this young person so they can become the best in their field eventually. And that was what Ericsson had done. They had given me 25 young people to take on this journey. Now, every day I had to get into the Ericsson Learning and Development Room here in Sandton, South Africa, where I'm chiming from. And it's quite interesting. I would never forget what happened. One of those young persons was the top of the top in his school. He had went his school that University of Witwatersrand, which we call WITS here in South Africa. Now, this young man, of course, him and all the others, I had seen, okay, this is one of the best from this school. So I had expectations when he showed up at that learning week. But shockingly, something was not connected. So we started day one, and as we opened that conversation and learning experience, he looked a bit ruffled, and that energy in the room was going to be a distraction, bearing in mind that he was the top in his class. So and I spoke to my associate facilitator and I said to him, I said, you know what? I think we should change the flow of this learning journey for these young people. And I remember shifting the learning from what we originally planned to an emotional intelligence activity, just to change the energy in the room. And that activity, I did it and we just moved on to other things. And things eventually aligned. Fast forward to day two, our top learner and top student came late.
Wow.
So
Okay.
I said to him, I said, okay, so I don't understand what's happening. Why are you late? And he says to me, everybody calls me awesome coach. He says, awesome coach. I really would like to tell you, but can we talk about it later? So I said, fine. Tea break, come through. Let's talk. Anyway, tea break, he shows up and he looks me in the eyes. He says, are you sure you really want us to talk about this? So I look at him, I'm like, come on. That's why we're seated here. Talk to me. And he goes, actually, I need to ask you what happened. I said, okay, I don't understand what you're talking about. He said, I'm trying to understand what happened to me. So I'd like to ask you too. I said, help me understand you. He said, maybe I should take you back on a journey. I said, go ahead. He said,
wow.
Through my university years, I have never had one full night of sleep. But yesterday night, I slept all through the night and overslept.
Wow.
That's why I'm late. So I would like to ask you what happened yesterday.
What was it you did in class that made him so relaxed?
There we go.
That he could sleep.
And that was my learning journey into going to stress reduction, humbling experience that I literally invested my time into, understanding a whole lot of things that causes stress to the point where it impacts on our sleep, impacts on our REM, impacts on our productivity, and eventually causes and catalyzes the accidents that we human beings begin to notice. So before those accidents happen, so much has been happening inside people that people are not noticing. So much has been happening within people that is causing them to clash with their colleagues, that, you know, when people are having clashes and issues and they're wondering, no, he's a bad person, she's a bad person. Excuse me, it's beyond that. There's so much conflict happening in the inner landscape of people that is not making them a peaceful person, because first and foremost, they are not at peace with themselves. We're not going to go into all of those details.
Honestly. So I want to backtrack now and talk a little bit about the train crash and the other, because I asked you about your response because I was wondering at other people's response to it as well. And the other people's response was automatically a blame game. Whose fault was it? And of course, the government was the first point of call. But then you say stress and fatigue. You didn't,
Indeed.
at any point at all, say
Indeed.
government was first to blame. So you need to sort of help us understand your angle here.
I think the first thing that is extremely important is for every one of us to realize, if I, Joshua Awesome, if I am not at peace with me, I cannot bring peace to any place or any space. So, in the wake of the train crash in Lagos, Nigeria, I believe that the fact that certain steps were not taken to prevent accidents and reduce stress inside people, and I'm not blaming anybody, I'm just saying that we need to first and foremost own our challenges. We need to own our experiences. We need to own our crisis. We need to own our challenges. Many lives were lost. And for us to avert a future occurrence of such a crisis, if I were opportuned to be a specialist, a stress reduction specialist, a coaching psychologist, a leadership researcher who has worked with over 100,000 persons, the very first thing I will do is I will have an internal revisit of everything. So, from the various professionals and people who work in the transport sector that makes the rail sector and industry of Nigeria successful, it's beyond the equipment, it's beyond the rail. It is now necessary for us to begin to clear the tracks. How do we clear the tracks? We need to focus on the stressors that is stressing the people. All right. So if I am a manager, for example, at a rail company, the first thing I want to do is I want to give attention around the things that are impeding the rail tracks of the mind of my people, of their well-being, of their attention. Because if we don't give attention to attention, these things will become a repeat occurrence. It's just a matter of time. So the communication that has been broken down, the energy levels, the miscommunication. Because you see, if somebody misses a communication, it's not intentional. Their mind is, blurred. They are not feeling it. They are not connecting with it. They are not able to notice, because nobody would want to kill anybody. But these missteps, which we call mistakes, we miss it because the take that has been trying to get our attention internally, calling our attention to attention, we're not listening. And the reason why we're not noticing it is because the stressors have become so profound that we're not hearing. We're not conscious. We're not aware of it. These are the issues that really leads to this type of a challenge. And by the way, I'm not trying to toot my horn. In 2 weeks, I'm supposed to be doing some consulting work for the British Railway.
Okay.
So I'm not talking from my head here. I've done research around what I'm talking about. But there are certain important factors that should be given attention. And when I do that engagement for the railway,
there was a strike recently. There was a strike in the British Railway Transport Workers Union about not up to 2 weeks ago. And that was a big deal because they hadn't seen that kind of movement in a very long time, in decades. I think they hadn't seen such since the time of Margaret Thatcher. So it's not just something that is unique to Nigeria. There
Indeed.
are stressors all over the world.
Yep.
But then again, I didn't mention the blame game here. that issue of the blame game, what are the first challenges that need to be addressed? What is at the top of the list? What are the things that need to be done to make sure that such a thing doesn't happen again?
All right. So as a stress reduction specialist, I think the very first thing that I'm going to suggest is a listening session needs to happen in the rail sector in Nigeria. The same way we are investing money in, spreading the rail, getting the rail interconnected to the entire country, and, spending so much money on infrastructure on the rail, whether it's the blue line or the red line or whatever it is, the national one. That's the same way we need to invest in the people who literally make this work. Otherwise, it will not work well. It's just a matter of time. And so the first thing that needs to happen is a listening session needs to be done. All right. Someone like me, for example, when I get invited to this type of a crisis, the first thing I do is I organize a listening session. All right. And that listening session starts with the CEO, to the board members, to the managers who run the various divisions. Now, typically, this type of an assignment, I need not less than 4 months to be able to get it done. And why is this important? Many times people are complaining, oh, this is a problem. How do we fix it? We don't have time. The fact that we don't have time is the more reason why we should invest a lot of time in getting clarity around this whole thing. So that's the first thing I would do. Okay, carry out a listening session, not just to listen, because many people listen to complain. Many people listen to respond. I listen through my coaching psychology lenses. I listen to hear what is not being said. I listen from what we call an active listening perspective, so that I'm hearing what is not being said. While I'm listening, I'm hearing what is being said and hearing what is not being said. Then I go back into my team, and I'm speaking my team of psychiatrists, coaching psychologists, executive coaches, leadership consultants, and we then debrief the entire data. We unpack it, we tease it, and then we're able to design a recovery plan. Okay. Now, I call that recovery plan a STAR plan. Now, to help people go through their stresses, we need to first understand what is stressing them. So I then design a stress and resilience. That's why I call it STAR. Stress and resilience program. That stress and resilience program always begins with a stress assessment. We are stressed. The entire stress within the organization, the people. Okay, we do a stress test. After carrying out that stress test, the data that emerges from that stress test, I then use that to design a recovery plan. Because I cannot help you recover from what I don't know. Many times when we are doing this stress recovery program and we first put people on that stress scale, what happens is that many people say, I knew something was amiss. I just didn't know what it was. And we use science, we use data, we use, this experience of ours to then put all of this together. Once we have done that, then we begin a recovery program. Many times, some of the people are overworked. Sometimes some people are having health challenges. And because of that, their flourishing has diminished. Okay? They are not able to get back into flow state. Think with me for a moment. Before we started this conversation, all right, You are a media professional, Titi. You know how to do your work. Before you get to talk about, I mean, you even sometimes know what button to press before we start this conversation. That is what we call flow state. Many times when you've done it for so long, your brain has been wired and reconnected, hardwired on that particular pathway. That is flow state. When a person is not getting to feel that flow state, when you get into flow state, it flourishes you and flowers you as a person. Oh my word. When you get into that zone, even your glow as a person is different. People can tell. They're like, woo, Titi, you are in the zone. You know what I'm trying to say? That's what we call flow state. You know, think about your favorite sports person when they strike whatever instrument they are using, whether it's a tennis ball, a hockey stick, whatever it is. That's what we call flow state. And once you get into flow state in your area of expertise, you begin to flower and flourish. But the moment you are not getting to that level again, you're already costing the organization resources. The amount of loss, if I share some data with you at what it costs Nigeria in a year, it's billions of naira, by the way, in a year to stress. I have some of this data. I've done the work. So we can literally use this expertise to shift the trajectory of where the country is headed. These are some of the things that really governs this construct, this mindset that I hold. And so during the pandemic also, I partnered with a professor of psychiatry at the University of Groningen in the Netherlands. And we created a VR goggles that helps people to recover from stress. So we have like 10 treatment protocols. And you wear the VR goggles after we've done an assessment on you as a person to determine your stress level. Now we're able to help you use it to recover from your stress. And everything, whether stressful or not, that is happening to all of us is happening in between our ears. I always say to people, if you want to have a beautiful country, you want to have a beautiful continent, you want to have a beautiful company, it begins with having a better brain. And that's where the work happens. That's why we cannot see people who are stressed. Everybody has faces, but the things that has happened to us, the body has kept the scores. So that's the beauty of this work. And I can go on and on, but I guess I should pause.
I know. But I want to touch a little bit more on the consequences of not dealing with this situation. Now you called, you mentioned a large amount of money just now, billions on this matter. But what are the other consequences of not managing stress to the economy and, of course, to the industry in focus today, which is transportation? Because a lot of people focused on trains and didn't actually focus on the bus driver and the buses and the roads. So it's all a network. Let's talk a little bit more about consequences in this particular situation.
Right. So the first thing, okay, the most important asset is not even the rail tracks, the rail trains, the buses. It is the human beings. Because they are bringing their being into that asset that you have invested in. Okay? Right. So what needs to happen literally is that the human beings need to be given attention. So the same way those trains will get serviced, looked after, the same way the buses, the cars will go for service, will be looked after. That's the same way the human beings need to be looked after. All right? And there needs to be intentionality with that. That's the first thing. All right. The next and important thing, because you were talking about, is a whole network. So the very first network that needs to be netted to work is the human brain. Okay. If people are stressed in Lagos, all right, there is no amount of good roads that would avert a crisis, an accident on the road. Why do we call this an emergency? All right, when this happened, the Lagos State Fire Service, for example, had to show up. It then became an emergency. Long before all this happens, the crisis that has been emerging inside human beings has been giving signals, trying to connect the brain, the body, to listen, but people are not listening. All right. That's what eventually catalyzed and brought what we saw. Now, the next thing that needs to happen is that for the passenger experience to be unique, just as we are caring for the individuals who manage the systems, we also need to realize that once the people are cared for, their customer service will be different. Once their customer service is different, it will get people who are riding on the train, the buses, to also come out with a different kind of energy. All right. We will then see productivity. When there's productivity, it impacts on the bottom line. When the bottom line is impacted on positively, then the resources to be able to source expertise like mine and various other expertise to be able to make this a beautiful experience, an experience that really talks to the excellence that Lagos, for example, and the country really needs. So those are some of the very important pieces and pillars that really will make this work. Otherwise, we would just be investing in machines and think that, okay, yeah, we need to make sure that the communication, it's beyond all of that. It's the people first and foremost, and that's the most important investment that we need to make. And I spoke about the work that I do, and that's why we also are trying to deepen some of this work, where we understand what is causing some of these things, where we are doing more research. And that's why when I wrote an article in Business AM, one of the things that I tried to do was, instead of just talking about the challenges, I wanted to talk about what the change will feel like. And I said, dream with me for a moment. Now, that dream is possible. But for it to happen, we need to wake up. All right? Because many times we sleep and then we wake up and then we don't get up and do something about it. So I'm hoping that, we'll be able to begin to do something about this and design something that will create that shift. And everybody is important. Everyone is important. The person that, yeah, go ahead,
that you
please.
say it, that you should put it that way. The fact that the machines are always getting serviced regularly, the machines are insured, their insurance companies put in place to make sure that even if anything goes wrong, it can be replaced. It goes to show that the people operating these machines, the buses and the trains, also need that kind of insurance, health insurance put in place, and of course the opportunity to de-stress. But I'm also thinking about the fact that the industry is still growing despite some of the hiccups, despite how slow it's been. The transport, especially the transport network in the mega city that's been proposed by the governor. What would your advice be if you had the governor right in front of you right now? Where do you think he should begin to address these issues in the transport network, and how would he begin the journey of creating a better experience for the internal customer?
I think the first thing is to start by saying, Your Excellency, Governor Sanwo-Olu, I think this is also an opportunity for me to first and foremost congratulate you for your re-election. If you are going to watch this, and I really hope you do, the first thing that I'd like to say is, with the President Buhari's recent, power, as it were, given to states, the new bill that has just been signed into law gives states, the power to be able to, have their own rail system. And that caught my attention, and I saw electricity also. So congratulations that you are able to fully function as the chief executive officer of Lagos State. And as somebody who's worked with leaders, executives, the first thing that I'd like to say to you, for the rail sector of Lagos to be a mega success that you really want it to be, and I believe we all want it to be, we need to improve safety. How do we improve safety? We need to reduce the accidents. How do we reduce the accidents and the injuries? We need to make sure that the staff, the people, are not fatigued. How do we do that? The first thing that needs to be done is a stress assessment needs to be carried out on the transport industry. And transport for me is not just the rail. It includes the buses, okay? A stress assessment needs to be done on both sectors. Those are the two major ones that I think you might have some control and oversight or leadership over. That's the first thing. Secondly, is after that has been done, and it cannot be done by somebody who is not skilled to do it. Once that is done, everyone who is a part of the sector needs to be supported towards flourishing at their peak. If they've been hired, then they know something about the sector, all right? And for them to be hired, we need to make sure that their well-being is looked after, okay? And if I were working with the government on this, that's the first thing I would do. And then I'll design a recovery program, all right? I would include certain treatment protocols that I use to lower the stresses of executives and leaders and people and professionals, which includes some of the solutions that we have designed at African Institute of the Mind. And some of it also includes the use of cognitive behavioral therapy. It includes the use of hyperbaric oxygen therapy. Because you see, here's the one thing. What has happened to everyone in the rail sector that has seen an accident cannot be wiped from their mind until they go through the support that will help them heal mentally. All right? So the post-traumatic stress in itself needs to be dealt with. I'm grateful that one of my colleagues, who's also in Nigeria and lives in Nigeria, Dr. Maimuna Kadiri, and she also sits on the board of the African Institute of the Mind. She's a well-respected psychiatrist. We have co-designed and done several sessions together. So again, I'm not going to be doing it alone, but I would also work with my supervising colleagues out across the continent, including the professor of psychiatry at a well-respected university here in South Africa, who has also traveled the world just like I have. And these are some of the interventions we will bring to play and give an analysis before it reaches a state of paralysis. And I'm not just throwing words, because the fact that we have seen one accident, it tells me that that crack is still cracking. And there are things that could, I'm not a prophet of doom, but there's science that shows us that if you don't attend to this stress, it could catalyze and become toxic even to the body of the people who are working there. And so
I have to ask, so sorry to cut you. I know that you could keep going on. So I want to, ask if, for instance, there are any initiatives or awareness platforms already in place for railway safety, training, support. Do you know if there's any support in your field already going on? Have you heard of any?
Okay, I will point again to Europe, and there's a global body, well, not global, European body that has taken this very seriously. So people who practice in the industry and look after the stress, the mental health of people around the world, all converge at a European knowledge experience once every year. And I am part of that body, and I attend that learning experience regularly. And that was created specifically to be able to support the shift in reducing some of these challenges. Now, the other body that literally is tasked to do that and lead towards the reduction of this type of a crisis is a regulatory body. Now, there's none in Nigeria, but there's one in South Africa. It's called the Railway Safety Regulator. And I'm privileged to have worked with the leadership of the Railway Safety Regulator also. So I speak from experience as one who has been privileged. Okay. So again, we would advise, we would make recommendations and say, okay, these are some of the bodies that we've worked with. If we truly want to see a shift where people are safe, where even some of the crises that we see, kidnapping, those are so yesterday stuff. We can work to make sure those type of things don't happen again. For that to shift, I'm not a security specialist, but I can tell you that there are certain things that once you put them in place and you are intentional about the well-being of the general populace, there will be a shift in the outcomes. And this is my deepest desire, and I'm deeply grateful for the opportunity to have this conversation with you, Tio, and I'm really hoping that the nation, and not just the nation, the continent, would begin to consider setting up a standard body that regulates the industry. So I'll give you one last example before I begin to close. Every rail company, over 100 of them in South Africa, actually gets regulated by the Railway Safety Regulator. All right?
Not by the government.
So that's the point. Because if the regulator is the watchdog, they know that they need to regulate the industry. So, for example, there are permits that are issued every year to all those, experts and expertise. The question is, most of the people who work in this industry, when did they get, their last CPD? I'll give you an example. I support South African Airways, for example. And every pilot must, every 18 months, do another test. Okay, so there are certain things that really are standard. It's not just to invest in, the hardware. Because you see, if you invest just in the hardware, you are not thinking of the back end, the software, the recertification, the realignment of these people. We'll keep having these continuous challenges. But for it to happen, it needs to begin from the right step. We need to stress assess, the entire industry. We need to stress assess the entire rail sector. The blue line, the red line, the green line, every part of it, okay? And that's my cry. Let's do the right thing. We've spent a lot of money getting the rail sector working. Let's clear the tracks by taking the stress away from the people. That's my last statement. Let's clear the tracks. For it to happen, for Nigeria to have a beautiful rail system, we need to help our people to have beautiful brains. Thank you.
Dr. Joshua, awesome. An awesome time with you all the time. It's never a dull moment, and conversations go in the direction they're supposed to, towards solutions, towards opportunities to do better. And I have to say thank you for joining us again, once again on One. You've joined me on other shows before, but this is the first time on One. So that's why I said once again. And I feel like the conversation is not over. If you are watching or listening right now have any questions or contributions, you can always put it in the chat or comment section of whatever platform you are watching or listening to us from. And we will do what we can to respond to those questions and contributions. And let's hopefully find solutions to these challenges. Thank you, Dr. Josh, once again.
Thank you so much. It's an honor. Thank you to your listeners and your viewers from around the continent and the world.
Thank,
Thanks.
thank you. Thank you. I wish we had more time to take some of the questions live here, but we'll leave it open to social media. You know, the social platforms are always active. Use our hashtag OneOnOneWithTiti, and let's see how we can continue the conversation. It's not over. It's not over at all.
It's not.
I'll be reaching out to you on LinkedIn a little more often. I'll tag you once in a while.
All right, let's make it happen. Thank you so much.
All right. So now, if you are unfamiliar with Dr. Josh, let me give you some insight into who this amazing individual is. Dr. Joshua Awesome has been in, he has his finger in so many pies, but he originally started out as a motivational speaker, a columnist. He was on the NTA, which is Africa's biggest TV network, for over half a decade. And he also writes amazing articles on the continent's business newspaper. It's kind of like the Financial Times of London, talking about business day. And he's worked with so many decision makers to try and make things happen. Presently, he holds a PhD in stress management and a leading learning and development consultant. He's an accredited facilitator. He's also a team building consultant and so much more. Just check him out on LinkedIn as soon as you can to find out more about his great work. Now, the conversation, as I said earlier, continues, and we will be looking out for your comments and contributions. But before I go, there was something you might have missed at the beginning of the program, and I'm going to slide the screen to the left a bit to show you this QR code. Now, a lot of us have been doing what we can to make our work smarter, not exactly faster, but smarter. And we have loads of things to advertise when it comes to our small businesses these days. You know what I'm talking about. So if you would like to make ad creatives on the fly, this particular software, this adcreative.ai, can be a more efficient solution for you. So you don't have to call on all those Gen Z young people that normally just chop your money to create designs. These are professional, international standard designs. All you have to do is input your logo, maybe your brand color, and some instructions, and press send. You will get a minimum of 100 different designs for your brand and company to use for social media, for motivation, for your website, for wherever you want to post them. Your newsletters, everything's covered in different shapes, in different formats. Look, it's a no-brainer. Just scan the QR code on your screen right now and check it out. You will send me a thank you message after it. All right, then, until next time. Thank you so much for watching.